Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is 6 keys to become more emotionally intelligent partners.
And emotional intelligence, truthfully, is one of my favorite topics, and I can't wait to define this for you and go into these 6 keys. But we also want to make sure you know we are hosting a live and free Marriage WebClass next week, Monday, March 25th. So you only have this one episode to hear before we have it. And that's why we wanted to mention it right at the beginning of this episode. So if you go to onlinecouplesworkshops.com, we'll also link that in the show notes. You will see all of the information. Again, this is a free web class with us, but we're going to give you critical skills and tools to communicate better, to de-escalate conflicts, making sure it's very practical, and also how to get better with repair. Because truly in our sessions with couples, we see that these are the 3 pain points that can impact your connection, your intimacy, your ability to overcome challenges. And so we're going to make sure it's very practical, actionable in your relationship. We also really recommend having the 3 guides. You'll see that as a discounted bundle option because we're going to be referring to several sections in the guides. You'll want to take notes and be able to use them even after the web class. So can't wait to see you at the live marriage web class. Make sure you go and register. With that, Aaron, will you define emotional intelligence first?
Yeah, the simple definition is your ability to identify and manage your own emotions as well as the emotions of others. Now, I will put a caveat that you can't really manage your partner's emotions, but emotional intelligence being, I would say, the understanding, the acceptance of your partner's emotions, and then the control of your own reactions to the emotions that your partner might be expressing.
Exactly. So we want to bring this up because we find that you can be an incredible person, right? You can be hardworking, you can be kind, you can really try to meet your partner's needs. But so many of us were not raised learning the emotional intelligence skill set. You went to school and you're like, you have to get good grades and you have to pass your exams and acquire so much information. And now, as an adult, there's a lot on your plate. There's a lot that you feel you have to manage. And what can easily be put to the wayside is this emotional understanding. But this is part of your bond. Like being able to connect over emotions, being able to open up to each other, being able to tackle difficult conversations and go through life stressors together. That's part of your bond.
Yeah, and instead it's doing one of 2 things. It's either having your partner have to walk on eggshells,
Mm-hmm.
because if you show even the slightest expression of an emotion, which we've been talking about this sort of scale, right? Your partner needs to be able to express, say, the emotion of frustration at a level 2, because we're going to have emotions in this life and in your relationship. And a lot of times a partner will feel as if they have to really hold things in, walk on eggshells for fear of the reaction that you would have.
Yep. Or if I bring up this 1 or 2 topics that I know are hot buttons for us, it just always turns into a fight.
Well, that's the second part, is
Mhm.
that this back and forth, starting from a little bit of emotion, is what escalates things into the conflict cycle.
What about the real life moments where one of you comes home, or maybe both of you come home from work or just a rough day, maybe with the kids, whatever you're doing, and you can sense the other person's feelings? And what often happens with couples is you take each other's feelings personally. You even really add to it and it becomes a thing between you guys instead of maybe it could have just stayed as stress about work or stress about the kids and it didn't have to affect the 2 of you. But we notice again, because of the lack of emotional intelligence, it does become a thing for you guys.
Yeah, so that's the main pain point. So we want to take this episode to talk about 6 keys to becoming a more emotionally intelligent partner. Now, I'll kick off with the first one, is that emotionally intelligent partners understand that emotions are not logical. If I was to put it a little bit differently, it's that the realm of reason is different from the realm of emotion. Now, if you've been enjoying our episodes recently, we've been going more into the psychology, so not going to go too deep here. But think about what emotion is. Emotion is this internal experience that arises as a result of a difference between your current state and a perceived future state. Now, what you want in the future could be wanted or unwanted. If it's unwanted, you try to avoid it. If you want it, you try to move towards it. So,
Mhm.
if something happens, certainly between the two of you, that in that exact moment feels as if it's preventing you from being able to live in the state you want,
Mm.
the emotion is going to come up.
Mhm.
So, simply put, that's what emotion is. So, in a sense, it's not logical, it's the realm of emotion. However, as we'll talk a little bit more about later, it'll be illogical to the other partner. But that's because you're not in the body of your partner, meaning you're not realizing what is the actual difference between the current state your partner is in, and more so, what is the perceived future state
Mhm.
that your partner in that moment feels as if is being prevented or a worse future state that you're now heading towards. That's why it's illogical to someone else because you're not in the mindset or mind frame
Mhm.
of that person to understand that difference in what is the future state that they're actually fearful of or wanting to move towards. If you did, and actually it's probably a part of emotional intelligence is understand, hey, what is it you're actually wanting in this exchange or in this
Mm.
situation?
Mhm.
And understanding that gives you a better sense, which might be a more logical, oh, I understand you are wanting to move towards this, and you feel like me or a situation is getting in the way of that.
Mm.
Ah, it makes total sense as to why that emotion would be there for you.
Mhm.
Now I can just help move in that direction that they wanted to go in.
We so often see that couples will almost be having different conversations. Like one partner is trying to have this logical conversation. Let's talk about the details. What's the plan about, let's say, finances, for example. And then the other partner is having an emotional conversation. I don't feel this way and you always this and you're having two different conversations. You're not on the same page. And what we find is that many times if you remember this point about emotional intelligence, we first have to acknowledge the feelings of the other person. Again, we may not feel the same way as Aaron already described because we're two different human beings. Why would you even expect that you're going to have the same emotional feelings and reactions to things? But okay, let me acknowledge, let's really embrace how we each feel about this topic. Now let's talk about the logical details. So that's the first point. Let's get into the second key, which is that emotionally intelligent partners do not immediately act or react from their emotions. So think about that. If you are strengthening your emotional intelligence, you aren't going to let your feelings, your emotions take you right into action and really lead to things that we know are not best. What do emotionally intelligent people do? We take a pause. We investigate our feelings. We do something to help ourselves feel a little bit more neutral. Doesn't mean you have to go back to complete peace or to bliss and happiness, but okay, if I'm feeling really angry for whatever reason, whatever circumstance is going on, instead of me just acting from that, which is going to be usually not great actions, let me just take a pause. Let me investigate this. Let me also do something to help myself feel better. Go on a walk, journal, go exercise, clean something up, talk to a mentor. So that's one thing that emotionally intelligent people really understand is I don't want to just take instant action from this.
So then you don't get defensive. You want to look inward as to why you maybe felt you had to defend yourself about this emotion, right? Rather than just deflecting it to be your partner's fault that you're feeling this, right?
Absolutely.
So, another point on this second key, I would just say that emotionally intelligent partners, they don't then try to pass off the emotion they are feeling as a set in stone fact or truth. Because if you do that, then you create a validation for those impulsive reactions,
Hmm.
right? So you understand again that emotions are a different realm. They also lag your thoughts, and you give yourself some time to let the dust settle. Something happened. Okay. you don't realize it, but you think a future state that you wanted is being thwarted. It's like, okay, but if I give myself time for this emotion to kind of settle, I may be able to alter my thoughts and just check out the validity.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, of I felt disrespected, I felt disregarded, I felt like I wasn't being prioritized. Now, if I gave myself time because I'm more emotionally intelligent to consider like where that was coming from, what state did it seem like I wasn't going to get to? Oh, the state of wanting my voice to be heard or my opinion to be considered. Oh, okay, I understand that. Was I actually being disrespected? Oh, you know what? Probably not. Maybe there was a miss in communication.
Mm-hmm.
So all that self-reflection can happen because I'm understanding that just because I feel something, though I can accept it, doesn't mean that this is some sort of fact. And
Mm-hmm.
that fact of, oh, I feel this way now validates I get to impulsively react. And then
Exactly.
everyone get out of the way. This is how I feel, and this is my truth, and no one can speak against my truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also justified to act however impulsively I want.
It's such a nuance that we've wanted to cover in a podcast episode because you'll hear, even from us and other people talking about marriage, that you've got to validate each other's feelings. And there's a nuance to this. So don't misunderstand what we're saying. But what we want you to be able to do through communication, through slowing down and doing this self reflection and then being able to talk about it, is realize that you don't want to be validating each other's misconceptions, be validating each other's insecurities that you're not working
Oh,
on,
wow. Yeah.
right? Or truthfully the thing that in your perception you need to work on, where that comes from. So there's a nuance. Like that's really advanced. That's when you've created so much self-awareness and emotional safety between the two of you, where you're able to take the conversation to the next level and go, okay, I can acknowledge that you're feeling angry about this, and I'm really glad you're sharing this with me, and I want to discuss this. And then the two of you are able to take it further. Okay, where's that come from? And, are we just misunderstanding each other? And so, yeah, we could go on a tangent about that, but there's such a nuance to the validation piece.
Yeah. And I think you're right. The validation in real practical terms is probably more like allowing and accepting
Mm,
momentarily until it can be explored.
that's a good way
Just
to
kind
put
of
it.
added that piece for myself.
Hmm.
Now, there's a thread that leads us into key three,
Hmm.
and it's that emotionally intelligent partners then take responsibility for the emotions they're having.
So we can't blame other people for what we're feeling. Of course, they play a part. Especially when you're married, you share a home, you share responsibilities, you are intertwined in so many ways. You're going to affect each other. And so it's not about, well, oh, you're feeling upset. I have no involvement in that. That'd be a deflection. But each person still owns that they are having that experience within themselves and that they can choose how they're going to cope with it. And so when we even talk about repair, and truthfully, you guys have to come to the marriage web class that we mentioned, because one of the hardest steps in repair after an argument is you feel hurt and so do they, for different reasons. And we can continue to put off, well, I don't want to repair because I'm hurt and the other person's doing the same thing. But if you can step into a place of personal responsibility and say, what part am I playing though? That is true power and freedom in a relationship. Like, you can stay trapped and stuck and disempowered in a relationship if you want to constantly put off responsibility to your partner. Every little thing they do and say and how they say it just provokes all this emotion within you. That is not going to be a very empowered life. That is you giving up your power to someone else. And so living a life of personal responsibility doesn't mean you're not affected by your partner, because again, you are partners, you are interconnected. However, you take responsibility for the certain things are evoking that within you, and you get to choose what to do with it.
Yeah, well said. Let me add then the fourth key here, that emotionally intelligent partners know how to hold space and don't put gas on the fire. So it's a way of conducting yourself when your partner is having some emotions.
Mhm.
Okay. Again, there's a future state they feel like is getting thwarted by you. Like, all right, that's fine. I'm going to just accept and allow that that's there. So holding space and then not like escalating it is that you recognize that my partner, I recognize that you over there, for example, are triggered by something.
Mhm.
And that's triggered by, again, the difference in the state that you were perceiving. And even just that, I feel like it starts to get me in the mindset that, well, I know it's not about me. So it's a future state that they thought was going to happen. And even just in that thought, it's like I become more curious. Like, well, I wonder what that state is, or I wonder what it is they're feeling, or I wonder
Mhm.
what their underlying need is. So it's those types of thoughts and inquisitive type of questions, whether verbally or even just to yourself, it just allows you to be in the space
Mhm.
to maintain your presence and to maintain being engaged in the conversation without withdrawing or shutting down. Or the gas on the fire would be more like the labeling and telling them that doesn't make sense, shouldn't feel that way, you should get over it, that's not what happened. All of that is just putting gas on the fire, having them feel invalidated or at least just not heard, kind of stepped over.
Mhm.
Kind of gives a sense that you don't really care.
Mhm.
And all of those things being what then puts gas on the fire.
Truthfully, if you think about your interactions where one or both of you is feeling emotion, and whether it has to do with the two of you or just something else going on in life, do you hold space for each other? Which, just to give a quick definition, if that's a newer term for you, is just the ability to be present and be in a non judgmental state as they process their emotion. And I know that's very difficult when it does actually have to do with you. Let's say you both are talking about, I'll just use money again, but money, and you have a lot of strong emotions and you feel like the other person has been doing this and that, and now you're having this emotional conversation and maybe getting into a place of blame, rather than what if you actually just were able to hold space for each other, be in that non-judgmental presence, and allow each person to express it and be like, I totally hear you, I get it, it has been frustrating. Like that's where it can be more of a bonding conversation. Or let's say it's about an in-law. In-laws is a hot topic for couples too. I totally understand. Like, it has been super frustrating and a big challenge for us, and I totally get it. And then the other partner will be like, wow, okay, that was really affirming, and I feel like you're not judging my feelings right now.
Humor, as we said a few episodes ago, you have to be attuned enough to know if humor is the right time. But
Mhm.
I found that in lower emotional states with you, I
Mhm.
can use humor and say something like, well, let's go get them. Like whoever it might be, like you got upset by
Yeah.
something, a family member, a
Annoyed, yeah.
stranger,
Mhm.
whoever. It's like, well, let's go get them, right?
Mhm.
Let's knock their door down. And it's like, well, you're obviously not going to do that.
Right.
You brought some humor, but I'm going with you, right? It's like
Mhm.
I'm in the experience as much as I can with you. Now, it might feel like I'm moving through these keys fast, but I realize how correlated they are.
Mhm.
Because as you were talking, I just heard in the ether
Mhm.
a listener out there that said, well, how can I hold space when it's about me
Mm.
and they are starting to attack me? Like, what about my boundaries?
Mhm.
So, this fifth key is that emotionally intelligent partners know that if you bottle things up and you avoid topics, that it comes out in worse ways later. But that also means you're able to find the way to still express what it is you need or request an agreement and then be able to hold that boundary
Mhm.
for yourself, that agreement that you both said previous. Now, if you're starting to label me or cuss at me or attack me, we've already come up. This is an agreement. And an emotionally intelligent partner will not get caught up
Mm.
in further reacting to the reaction coming in
Mhm.
your direction and say, hey, this is an agreement that we've already agreed upon. And I'm reminding you of it. If this continues, I'm just letting you know I'm not going to be participating in this. So obviously, this sounds a lot calmer than you might say in the moment, but you're not trying to be overly heightened. It's
Mhm.
like, hey, well, you're starting to swear. This is an agreement we have. And if you want to continue, we'll need to hold these agreements. If not, I'm going to be removing myself until we can use the agreements.
Oh, I love that point. It's so true about implementing the boundaries. I'll say for this fifth key, which I just want to repeat, is that emotionally intelligent partners know that if one of you bottles things up and you avoid the topic, it will come out later and in worse ways. So everything you said is a big, big point about that. I also want to add why it's so important that you have intentional times that you're checking in, because we know life is busy and you can be like, well, I'm tired. We just worked. We got the kids to bed. I don't want to have to tackle this big topic, that we know we need to address. And so then couples keep putting it off, putting it off, putting it off. And then again, the next thing that triggers a conflict, now you unload on each other, all these things. Well, see, it's this and it's that. And you are trying to solve all these problems in a heightened state. It's so inefficient and ineffective. And so this is why we're so big on the family meeting process. You're going to hear us repeat that because it is one of the best hacks for preventing conflict, for preventing bottling things up. Because again, emotionally intelligent people know that you have to be able to talk about these things in a more calm and constructive way. You don't want it to come out in worse ways. So we're going to talk more about how to make the family meeting productive in the web class. Again, we just are saying you've got to be there. We only do these twice a year, by the way, too. So you definitely want to attend. Make sure you use that link. Let's get to the sixth key, which is that emotionally intelligent partners can handle a healthy dose of conflict and don't think it's the end of the world or something to avoid. And that's really key because we find that there's a lot of times at least one partner who wants to avoid the conflict. Aaron, you know them because that used to be you. His eyes widened like, what? What are you trying to say
It's
about
like
me?
I'm the leader of the avoidant conflict group.
Yes, but you've evolved beyond that. So there's often someone who wants to avoid conflict for whatever reason, whether it's how you were raised, it's how you perceive conflict. And then a lot of times there's another person that feels like it's just the end of the world. I mean, I feel anxious. I can't sleep. I can't, even function until we resolve things. And so we can understand both positions. But again, we're here about developing and strengthening your emotional intelligence. And when you two create this environment where you're going to talk through things, like you know how to repair. Again, we're going to talk about that in the web class too, but you know how to repair. You also know that you are going to address it. You're going to talk about it. Then you don't have to panic that every conflict is like this terrible thing in your relationship. And you have to know again that you are going to de-escalate things using all the other points that we talked about in this episode so far. So just know that it's not a good strategy to avoid conflict altogether. And it's also not a good strategy to panic and become extremely anxious when conflict occurs. Because it's inevitable. If you're going to be together a long time, which clearly we know that's what you're committed to, you want, then it's bound to happen that you're going to disagree on things, that you're going to trigger each other, that you're going to be in bad moods. And so you have to be able to have healthy conflict, keep it de-escalated, and be able to work through it without just piling up this emotional baggage. Because I promise you, if we were to boil down the top reason that we see couples either become very disconnected, they feel a lot of strain in their relationship, or they feel like they even reach a make it or break it moment, it's because they were piling up all this crap that they didn't resolve. Truthfully, like, sorry to just be straight up about it. And so that was a long-winded explanation for that sixth key, but you have to be able to handle a healthy dose of conflict. Now, with that said, those are the 6 keys to becoming more emotionally intelligent partners. Remember, this is a journey. You aren't going to be perfect ever, but you want to make it a goal to continue to strengthen and evolve to be more emotionally intelligent partners. So really listen to these, send us a message if they hit home. We love hearing from you guys. Make sure you attend the Marriage Web Class that is linked in the show notes. And if you're new here, make sure you hit subscribe. We want to make sure that you can hear past and future episodes. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. We cannot wait to connect with you on the next episode.